Next up, we play host to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Kick-off on Sunday at the Olympic Stadium is 7 p.m, with the match being covered by BT Sport. And one would presume the good people at Eyes Up Mother Brown. And the bad ones.
Yarmolenko looks up, 20 yards from goal, drops the shoulder, goes inside, cuts a lovely little ball across the snodgrass, and it's in the back of the net. 1-0 West Ham, no.
So Wolves then. Well, they had a long old time of it last term, starting in the Thursday Night League on the 25th of July 2019, and finishing in the same competition on the 11th of August 2020 with a 1-0 defeat to the usual winners Seville. After that long slog, they repeated their 7th position in the league of the previous season. But much as I suspect to their relief, that wasn't quite good enough to see them resume their European travels this time around. So far this season, they have a win and a loss to their name. An opening day 2-0 win up at Bramall Lane was followed by a 3-1 defeat at home to Manchester City. The latter game might have been a bit closer had they had their shooting boots with them, with a few chances going begging in the early second half. Those 3 points that they've got have left them in 12th spot for the time being, for what it's worth at this time of the season. In recent years, they've been one of the more active players in the transfer markets, and Daisy, the socially bubbled personal assistant with a beautiful smile, informs me that they've been busy this time around, with no fewer than 4 new boys putting pen to paper. The first of these, Matija Sarkic, didn't stick around too long after signing on a free for Villa. Before the ink had dried on his contract, the keeper was dispatched out on loan to Shrewsbury. No transfer window is complete at Molineux without the arrival of someone from Portugal, and this summer has been no exception, with 3 players arriving from the country that is, officially, England's oldest ally. Although, to be fair, one of those was an academy prospect. However, both Fabio Silva and Nelson Semedo have gone straight into the first-team squad. Daisy informs me that the fee for Silva was a cool £35 million, which is a decent wedge for an 18-year-old. Even more so when you consider that his grown-up career at Porto has consisted so far of just 12 league games, in which he scored once during the process. His debut for Wolves came in the 1-0 League Cup defeat to Stoke, and he also came off the bench in the defeat to the Citizens. The fee paid for right-back Nelson Semedo starts out at £27.5 million, with a further £9.2 million potentially payable in add-ons. Semedo has arrived from Barcelona, for whom he made over 80 league appearances in the last 2 years, and he's been capped over a dozen times at full level by Portugal. As well as strengthening the right-back slot, they did the same on the other side of the pitch. It'll never catch on. This took place with the arrival of 31-year-old left-back Fernando Marchal. €2 million was enough to extricate the defender from Lyon. Although he isn't Portuguese, he's from Brazil, where they speak much the same language, so they'll have to make do with that. He pulled up lame during the Manchester City match with some unspecified muscular injury, and he's a major doubt for this weekend. Kiana Hoover arrived from Liverpool for the sum of £13 million, thus proving that someone at Molineux isn't superstitious. Hoover started out as a kid in Holland with AZ, moving on to Ajax at the age of 12. At the age of 16, Liverpool poached the player, and he stayed at Anfield for just under 2 years. Although he turned up in the cup competitions on Merseyside, he never progressed to the league side, which led to his move down the M6. Still only 18, he's made international appearances for the Netherlands at every age level up to and including under 18 level. So no full Dutch caps yet then. The only other injury apart from Marchal is fellow fullback Johnny. He's been out for a while with a serious knee injury, which he picked up in the Thursday Night League match against Olympiacos back in August. But other than that, they have a full squad to choose from this weekend. Let us move on then to the wild and wacky world of association football. Now, those of you who've been around for a while may recall in the past that we used to run an occasional series which we called Daft Crime of the Week. Well, we've got a new candidate in the form of diving racist cannibal Luis Suarez. It appears that Suarez is part of the great clear-out at Barcelona, and at one stage it appears he was about to sign on the dotted line for Juventus. With that in mind, he flew into Perugia where he sat an Italian language exam as part of his application for Italian citizenship, for which he qualifies through marriage. Well, it seems that this exam was somehow fixed. Despite his having a poor grasp of the language, he somehow passed with flying colours. The Italian financial plodder involved, and as a result, the deal with Juventus has collapsed, with the player now appearing to stay in Spain with Atletico Madrid. Rumours that Harry Kane failed a similar exam for English citizenship are false. They only asked him one question, which is, "What is your name?" And I have it on good authority that he reached the 75% pass mark without too much fuss. Well, what about us? That was an eventful few hours, wasn't it, in midweek? The news that Mr Moyes, Issa Diop and Josh Cullen all had tested positive for COVID-19 was, well, a bit of a stunner. At the time of writing, all three are being described as asymptomatic, and obviously we hope that that remains the case and there are full recoveries all round. On the pitch, or more accurately on the side of the pitch, the late changes saw us have only 6 players on the bench, 2 of whom were goalkeepers. Memories of dear old Les Seeley then. The match itself was relatively comfy, save for Hull's stereotypical lower league tactic of trying to kick lumps out of anything that moved. Referee Hooper was far too lenient with them in the first half, with Anderson in particular being the victim of numerous assaults which were either ignored or at advantage played. The attack that put young Ashby out of the game was particularly nasty, with the lad being launched into in mid-air. That incredibly only fetched a yellow, and Hooper, if he can draw himself away from the buffet for a few minutes, needs to consider this. If a challenge is of a nature that would see a player red-carded in rugby, how likely is it that a yellow card would be appropriate in football? I suspect that challenge would have been one that, had VAR been in place, the Stockley Park troll would have suggested Hooper taking another look. In the end, it was a good professional win, and the 5th goal was a nice spot of rubbing their noses in it. And it ought to have been so much more, really. Some of the shooting was a bit woeful. It was as if the old Phoenix from the Flames thing from Fantasy Football League had been resurrected, with various players all trying to resurrect the Chris Waddle penalty from Italia 90. In the end, getting 5 was a much better way of exacting revenge for the kicking than retaliation, which, whilst initially satisfying, often results in an irritating suspension. The youngsters did well, even Longello, who was thrown in and had a tough start before he had a chance to get into the game. Shades of VAR handball about that one. It was his beautifully timed interception that ultimately led to the 4th goal, remember. Anderson was outstanding. He seemed up for it right from the start. And my particular highlight came in the second half, where he hooked a clearance from the edge of his own box out to Haller, who bore down on the whole box, looked up and saw that the only player who'd bust a gut to get into the box in support was, you've guessed it, Anderson. Now yes, I know it was only Hull, but you can only beat who you're drawn against. And as we've seen in the not too distant past, if you go into matches against lower league opposition, you'll come a cropper more often than not if you have the wrong attitude, so fair play and credit when it's due. One final point from the night before we moved on. It should be noted that Jack Wilshere A played and B completed 90 minutes, both of which must constitute some form of collector's item. Injury news, and we have 4 on the sick list at the moment. Diop and Cullen will be stuck at home with yellow tape across their front door. However, Noble's toe, which sounds like the name of one of those wars we used to have with Spain in the 1700s, seems to have cleared up. Haller appears to have picked up a tight hamstring from Tuesday night. Not sure how late in the game that came up, but presumably he stayed on to avoid the potential ignominy of being replaced by David Martin. In any case, it would appear to have healed up enough for him to be available if required this weekend. Well, in making predictions for league matches, one has to pretty much ignore the midweek efforts and treat the League Cup as an entirely different thing, which I suppose it is. You might think, therefore, that my prediction for this match might err on the pessimistic side of things. However, I'm going to suggest that we might build on last weekend's efforts to the extent that I can foresee us gaining our first point of the season this weekend. I'm therefore going to stick the £2.50 that I was going to chip in towards the travel expenses for the players to get to Everton next week, what with them inconveniently having won a match that means an away tie. I'm going to stick that on a drawn match. Shall we say 2-2, Mr. Winston? Enjoy the game.